Okay, so in 2017, I was asked to participate in a conference in Leicester University where they said that you will only get 20 seconds and you can present 20 slides, 20 seconds per slide and 20 slides, which means 400 seconds, about 6 minutes, yeah? And this was a conference about my thesis. So I decided to write a poem about my research, yeah? And this is this poem. In a cage, intoxicated, the reflexive researcher. And I told you about my research that around a quarter of Pakistani men in the UK drive taxis for a living. When migrant communities are overrepresented in lower menial jobs, it could well be an equality issue. Yeah. My research aims to explore how free are migrants, especially Pakistani men in UK in this study, to choose any occupation, or are there constraints which limit their employment options, nestled in the structure agency debate, which we did in lecture 3. Yeah. This research draws on Bourdieu's theory of social reproduction to explore how the intersection of class, which is social capital, religious capital or affiliations, gender, symbolic capital, and ethnicity, cultural capital, affect the employment habitus of Pakistani men in the UK, forming a cage-like structure, often imposing toxic rules, so rules which stop you from going ahead, right? The habitus could potentially limit their options in the labor market, pushing them to taxi driving or other forms of self-employment. As a reflexive researcher, while doing this ethnographic study, I often ask some uncomfortable yet pertinent questions, which led me to express some of my reflections in this poem. Since all of you are required to also do a reflection at the end of this module, I thought today, when we are discussing race and ethnicity, this might be a good place. So please, you all can sit down and I will read out my poem. And then I will leave it here. You can come and see it later on if you would like, okay? So 1 in 4 Pakistani men in the UK drive taxis for a living. Is it a choice or constraint? Their fortunes misgiving? How free are they to choose a job? Do they really have a choice? Or do their class, religion, and ethnicity take away their own voice? How does being a Pakistani man in UK affect their life chance? What options do they get in a society of white dominance? Economists have sought to answer these questions in many ways, through human capital theories or the role an ethnic penalty plays. Many studies have pointed to the disadvantage of Pakistanis in this land. Poor education, rural backgrounds often push them to the lowest band. Discrimination is still rampant, in spite of all the laws. How fair is Britain, boasting of its equality vows? But then these penalties are not the same across all groups that dwell. Indians and Chinese in the same British labour market have done pretty well. Is education then the emancipator, the key to success? Yet, why do some second-generation Pakistani boys to taxi driving recess? Unable to find an answer, I turned to sociology too, to Giddens, Archer, and Pierre Bourdieu. I found Bourdieu closest to explaining the reproduction of class, of habitus, doxa, illusio, how they affect our life, alas. A habitus is formed as a mental structure which guides our minds. a perception of only this or that could be done, which an illusio binds. The habitus is reproduced generations after generations. Yet between structure and agency lie man's deliberations. Or is it the various capitals, he says, that create this doxic structure, social capital, religious, symbolic, or culture? So our class, affiliations, gender, and ethnicity form a certain cage, a structure one is born in as we enter life's stage. We do not choose these for ourselves, but they yield their power on us, reproducing the habitus, affecting our long-term prospects thus. But man is born free, a rational thinking being. How does one negotiate this cage? When does agency kick in? Faced with these questions, I took a social justice stance, an ethnographic study, an interpretivist dance. What counts can sometimes not be counted, and what's counted doesn't count. So I'm presenting their voices qualitatively in their own account. But wait, who am I in this entire scheme of things? What's my positionality? A question of reflexivity rings. Am I an insider or outsider here? What common sense of my participants do I actually bear? I am a contrast to them in many a way. I am an educated Hindu Indian woman from the middle class. They are taxi drivers, Muslim, Pakistani men from a working class. So how does one research these subjective questions of the mind? How will I unearth the habitus of being a minority in the grind? How do my own assumptions affect what I say and ask? How in the glory of my own habitus does my research bask? Is reflexivity a reflection, confession, or just a cathartic outburst? If we all affect our research uniquely, then what epistemology do we trust? Where does the researcher draw the line to remain objective? Between the study and real people who are subjective. Whose story is it anyway? Mine or theirs? Am I their true representative as someone who cares? How will this help policy and practice? What impact will I make? Finding social justice for the community I wish to awake. I have more questions than answers at this stage. Perhaps I am bound unknowingly by my own cage. But these questions, however painful, need to be asked for sure. Only then will I, as an impactful and reflexive researcher, mature. Thank you.